What is going on, guys? Welcome back. So in this video, I'm going to be going over the absolute bloodbath that was Micron's Q4 earnings report. You guys know that I've been following Micron for years now on this channel, and so anytime that Micron comes out with news, especially that is this impactful to the company, you guys know that I'm going to be talking about it. You guys know I'm going to be giving my opinion on it. I'm going to be looking at the entire semiconductor space from a macro view, going down, drilling down into what the heck is happening with Micron, and I'm going to be giving you my opinion as to whether or not I think Micron is a buy right now, whether I think Micron is a sell. What am I doing? You guys know that I am currently not invested in Micron. I did sell out months ago when it was trading at around $45 a share because I was afraid that something like this might happen. So in this video, I'm going to be digging deep. I'm going to be going over what the company said, and I'm going to be giving my opinion as to what I would do right now if I was either A, holding Micron as an investment, or two, if I'm not in Micron right now, is Micron attractive to me? So hopefully you guys get some use out of this. If you guys like Micron or you follow any of the other companies in the semiconductor space, I would highly recommend sticking to the end of the video, because as you guys know, these details are going to be very in-depth, and I'm going to be talking a lot about the entire space in general. And, you know, if you look at the entire space in general, in my opinion, for semiconductors, you really need to know what everybody's doing if you plan to make any money in the industry. Let me know in the comment section down below what your thoughts are on Micron, but without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, so starting things off, Micron's earnings reports, they came out, and the stock immediately, kind of got bumped up a little bit because they did actually beat their estimates. However, once they started to talk about their forecasts for next quarter and next year, the stock price took an absolute beating. And there were also a couple of key factors with one of their major buyers that really upset all of the investors that have been following Micron for a long period of time now, because Micron essentially went back on one of the key points that made their stock price rebound over the past year. And I'll get into that in just a second. But, from a high level point of view, they talked about, first let's talk about their DRAM business. So their DRAM is over 65% of the overall revenue that this company makes. So DRAM is definitely the biggest ticket for this company. And they talked about how their bit rate led declines. So that means essentially you can think about it is that their fabrication process for making all of these RAM modules, it's been refined. They understand what they're doing now. They were able to scale up. They had a massive amount of CapEx this past year. So, their overall cost for producing it went down. However, something to keep in mind when you talk about that is that not only are they, maturing their fabrication process, but, Samsung, SK Hynix, and everybody else in this space is also doing the same thing. So what does that mean? You have a massive influx in supply. And unfortunately, as we'll get to in just a bit, is that the overall demand realistically hasn't improved much over the past couple of years. So you said that it kind of topped out in 2017, and from 2017 to current, it's just kind of been on a decline spiral. There hasn't been a lot of innovation across computing. There's been a lot of issues between the whole China trade war, and there hasn't been a lot of innovation in this space right now. So even though that it's getting cheaper for them and their costs are going down for supplying this DRAM, they're only able to sell it at a much lower price. So they're actually losing money in this transaction, and they're actually having their margins lowered because of this. So that's something you definitely need to keep in mind on. On the NAND front, that accounts for the rest of Micron's revenue, they started to notice a bottoming and slight rebound in the consumer space. So as you can go down here, that was kind of the main thing that they wanted to highlight, was that, hey, SSDs aren't such a money pit right now anymore. And so obviously that's not really the best news to hear as an investor. You would rather have okay, that industry is rebounding, that market's driving, and we think that a lot more people are going to be going in that direction, and there's going to be more widespread adoption. However, a lot of the widespread adoption has already happened, so now, in my opinion, it's going to be more of a trickle-down effect to really get the remainder of the market share. I definitely think they're going to get the majority of the market share with just SSDs. I think that's just the way the whole industry is going in, but I think the majority of the migration to that has already taken place, so it's going to be a much slower transition from here on out. And then probably the key market that I want to focus on is the data center. So data centers are where Micron, Intel, AMD, NVIDIA, where all those major semiconductors get almost all of their money from, are from data centers. Now, data centers, for those of you that, are kind of new to this whole thing, data centers are the massive warehouses that pretty much support cloud computing and, everything else that's done, via the web, and you're going to be accessing or storing data, from some server. Data centers are where it's going to be located on. and it requires so much, capex for any company to get into this space or to really, really transition into putting all their data on the cloud. So there's still, in terms of a long-term time horizon, data center growth is going to be pretty high for, essentially over the next decade. It's a secular trend. Once we start going to cloud, we're not really going away from it. And so you always want to keep a mind on what is this metric doing. And so they say solid demand, but it realistically is just kind of flattening off. There was a major decline when the whole China trade war really started to spike up, and it significantly slowed down the amount of growth that was in data centers as there had been over the previous couple of years. And so now it's not as shaky as it used to be. However, they're still expecting, not an amazing recovery anytime soon. So, that doesn't really bode well for someone that's attempting to, invest in the company, especially if you're investing in now and you plan on only riding it for a few years, or you're worried about us having a recession. The fact that data centers are still so shaky is definitely not going to bode well if you are an investor. And so now the biggest update that came with its earnings report is the Huawei update. So now, if you guys have been following my channel, and hint, if you're into semiconductors, I highly recommend doing it because that is kind of my my bread and butter for investing. With the Huawei ban, as we all know, Donald Trump, Canada, and a lot of the European Union banned Huawei due to all the cybersecurity issues that were going on with the company. And, Huawei, as it stood about a year ago, Huawei stood at 13% of Micron's revenue for RAM. And so since RAM is 60+% of their overall revenue, Huawei was one of their biggest, buyers for their product. And they get blacklisted by the United States, and everybody's freaking out. Oh my God, we're not going to be able to sell any products to Huawei. Micron's going to go to the floor. And their stock price did. It dropped a significant amount on this news and continued to bleed until the company came out with their earnings report I believe 2 earnings reports ago, and they talked about how, okay, well, we're not able to sell the things that we make in the United States. However, the patents and everything that we hold outside of the United States, we think we're going to be able to loophole that, and really push a lot of that inventory out on Huawei and mitigate the damage done from all of these trade talks. However, as you can see here, they did not anticipate the amount of issues that they were going to have in doing this, and they had a significant amount of decrease in sales going to Huawei. So they were able to really diversify their portfolio more, and they said that Huawei went from being about 13% to about 10% of their RAM demand. But that's still, a significant amount of their RAM and their inventory that they're pushing out there. And the fact that they're really not able to sell it is still not a good sign. And also, obviously, Micron hopes that the United States gives them a pardon and allows them to do transactions with Huawei. But then you take a look at what President Trump's talking about, and President Trump does not seem to have any inclination to allow Huawei to do any business with the United States for a good long period of time. So companies like Micron are still going to be suffering a massive dip in sales because of this, and a lot of investors were not expecting the amount of impact this was actually going to have based off what the company gave an update to just a couple of quarters ago. And now again, to look at their guidance just as a broad level perspective, they believe that overall growth is going to be about the same. They believe that the back half of 2020 is when a lot of growth is going to reignite, and I think that 2020 is going to be a significantly better year than 2019. But let's back this up a bit. Over a year ago, they were talking about how the second half of 2019 was going to be their major rejuvenation, let's say. In terms of their sales, they thought that that was going to be happening. But you have companies like Intel, you have companies like AMD, and you have companies like Nvidia not executing well, and you have trade talks still not doing that well. And it's preventing them from really being able to rebound and go back to as profitable as they were back in 2017. So definitely keep that in mind when you're looking at this. Take all of these forecasts as a grain of salt, because at the end of the day, Micron is at the whim of what the other major semiconductors are doing and what the president decides to do with trade talks. So, they can forecast this and they can say if nothing changes right now, this is what we assume it's going to be, but that does not necessarily mean anything that they're talking about right now is going to happen. But since no one can really accurately forecast what the heck is going on in Donald Trump's mind or what way he is going to be, swayed in the foreseeable future with the whole China trade talks, let's take a look at the companies that are going to directly impact how Micron performs in the future based off of their product lineup and their product sales. So taking a look at Intel. Intel, in my opinion, is the bane of the existence for why Micron has not been performing that well over the past couple of years. Now, obviously, there's a lot of macro trends going on right now, but I heavily believe that with having over 90% of the data center market share, Intel not rolling out with new CPUs and constantly pushing them back is significantly dragging down this whole industry and is also dragging down Micron's sales. But thankfully, assuming we can take Intel's word for it, they do believe on rolling out their new line of Xeon processors in the back half of 2020, as you can see here. And assuming that any of this is right, and assuming Intel has finally at least gotten the release date correct for a processor that has been getting worked on or generation of processors that's been getting worked on for over 2 years now, assuming this is finally the last lap of it, we can finally see some innovation going on in this space that's going to stimulate some more sales and more growth in that industry, assuming we don't hit an economic recession or anything like that. And then you can take a look at AMD. So AMD just came out with their new Roman EPYC line. And so this chipset is absolutely amazing. It significantly did leaps and bounds over their predecessors, and it's expected to do even leaps and bounds over Intel's current Xeon processors. So unless Intel comes out with like bang buster, product lineup for their newest line, I believe AMD is actually going to be able to take a lot of market share. Now, a lot of market share in the data center market is probably only going to be like 1 to 3%, but that's still a big jump for a company like AMD. Now, this also allows a lot cheaper of an option going into the market, which for companies that, may or may not be as confident as they used to be in the future, the whole looming recession that's on the horizon that everybody seems to be talking about. These companies now might be able to lower their capex, but still expand and improve on their data center. So they might actually go with this more often. So that still is a, decent feat for Micron, assuming traction is able to be grown with this. So both of those things, assuming on the back half of 2020, there's going to be a lot of adoption for all of these new processors. And hopefully that means, if you're invested in Micron, hopefully that means that a lot more data centers are going to go up and that a lot more people are going to be buying RAM. Then you're going to have companies like Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron that have all been working on their fabrications, bringing down their costs and making those chips, and then have that demand skyrocket. They're going to just make boatloads of money off of that. So that is really the catalyst that I think you need to be paying attention to, is what the heck is going on with Intel and with AMD. I think that if you plan on making money with Micron, those are the companies you need to be looking at. There's also NVIDIA, but NVIDIA, they refreshed a ridiculously overpowered GPU lineup, so I think it's going to be roughly the same for them for the next couple of years. So I would definitely keep an eye on Intel and AMD. And now, just for giggles, let's take a look at the chart of Micron. Because as you guys know, when I look at Micron and we look at semiconductors, there's a lot more of a technical and trading-esque approach that I take to these, because these are companies that I do believe in the long term, and I would be totally fine holding them for 5+ years at a time. However, there's just so much information and so much in this industry changes daily. Unless you really have your finger on the beat, there's so much volatility that can go into it. But in my opinion, if you are keeping up to date with the industry, you really know what moves prices across the board. I think that volatility creates a lot of opportunity for a trade, and it just allows you to buy it in at a better price or sell it at an over-exuberant price. So as you guys see here, last time I bought it, when Micron hit below book value, and I loaded up. You guys, I made multiple videos about this. I talked about it a lot on Instagram, so if you guys don't follow me on Instagram, make sure to follow that. I do comment whenever I plan on buying an investment. I loaded up at $28.50. I even put it in the channel portfolio here. And then the company skyrocketed, and then right around here, you had Intel and AMD giving future updates and NVIDIA giving future updates as to what they plan on doing it. And then in my opinion, the analysts were expecting massive rebounds in this space when the actual companies that drive the space were forecasting relatively lackluster results. And so in my opinion, that was a big red flag. And whenever you buy into a company that has an extremely pessimistic following currently, and then in just a couple of months, there's an extremely exuberant following to it, that a company could say, okay, we're only going to do 5, but analysts come out and say, I'm expecting 8 to 10. There's a lot of red flags going on there, and I don't like to deal with that, especially in a company or in an industry as volatile as the semiconductor space. So I talked about selling out around here, so I made a really nice profit. I made roughly 50% on my money. And then I have been out of the company since then. So as you can see right now, I did miss out on some gains. You know, if I held on to it and I sold at the top by some miraculous thing, you know, woohoo, I can time the top, you know, I could have made another 20% or so. But I also saved myself from, you know, essentially giving back almost all of my gains. So in essence, I think I made the right call. I do believe that right now the calls that I've made with Micron, I have been able to trade the company relatively successfully, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that I work in this space, or I worked in this industry for 6 years. I am constantly looking at this. I just went through so much with building my new computer. Like, I know what every company in the semiconductor space is doing, at least that has to do with PCs and data centers. I know what all of them are doing. So I've been able to do this and, you know, time it relatively well. I'm not going to say that I am, you know, I still don't put a lot of money into this in the grand scheme of things with my portfolio. This isn't the majority of my account, but I do have the amount of money that I do want in Micron to begin with. I do trade with it, as you guys have known, and thankfully I've been profitable, at least for now. So looking at the chart, looking at what's going on, I don't think right now is a great time to initiate a buy in a Micron. Largely due to the fact that with Trump being so anti-Huawei, with the China trade war, and Trump talking about delisting all of the Chinese companies on the U.S. stock exchange, which I think is just going to be, I don't think that's going to happen right off the bat, but I think that that's going to bring a lot of, pessimism into the stock market, and it's going to be a lot of noise, and any company that has a lot to do with China is probably not going to do well over the next month. So between that, looking at the technicals, it's in free fall. You know, analysts are still actually relatively bullish on the company, but the way that the company's guiding, I don't think it was awful. I do think it could have been a lot worse. I'm relatively okay with what was said, but I really want a much cheaper price. I want it closer to book value than it is right now if I were to reinitiate my position. Or I would want a company like Intel or AMD to come out and be like, we've sold more than we expected, or the product's going to be out quicker than we expected. And I think that that would be a really good catalyst for a company like Micron. So unless one of those levers happens, I'm not really interested with the company. Now, the balance sheet's fine. The company did do a lot of share buybacks and things like that. So from a fundamental standpoint, the company is still fine. But due to its cyclical nature and due to its dependence on its peers in the semi space, I definitely think that you need to really be taking a high-level macro look at a company like Micron before you plan on, you know, going in and out of an investment. So that's my overall takeaway. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Hopefully you guys got some use out of this, and hopefully you guys did not buy right before Micron's earnings report and are very sad right now. So I hope that wasn't you. Let me know in the comment section down if it was, and, you know, maybe we can talk about it, and, you know, we can spitball some ideas on what you should do now. But thank you guys again for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.